Good afternoon, Federal Demonstration Partnership. Welcome to the Federal Agency Update. I know this is a high interest session. And so we have 7 presentations this afternoon. And so we're going to get started. We're going to start with NASA, and we have Mary Sladek and Christiane Diablo presenting. So over to you, Mary.
Thanks, Debbie. I'll actually go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Christiane Diallo, a program analyst with the Grants Policy and Compliance Branch within the NASA Office of the Chief Financial Officer. I am joined by my colleague, Mary Sladek, a Research Program Manager with NASA Science Mission Directorate. Today, I'll be going over a few policy updates, and then I'll turn it over to Mary to share some of our current and upcoming notice of funding opportunities that are specific to the NASA Science Mission Directorate. Next slide, please. Next slide. Contact information is provided here, so feel free to reach out if you have any questions following this presentation. Next slide. Next slide. At the September FDP meeting, we did share that NASA has been working to address requirements from the Executive Order 13985 titled Advancing Racial Equity and Support for Underserved Communities through the Federal Government. And one of those requirements in the executive order is for agencies to develop an action plan that addresses barriers identified in NASA's equity assessment of its programs and policies. On November 30th, NASA submitted its draft equity action plan to the OMB, and the plan outlines several actions that NASA plans to take to address barriers to full and equal participation in its OSTEM internship program, the grants and cooperative agreement, including the scientific competition process, and the enterprise strategy set aside for underserved communities and small business programs. One of the actions that I would like to highlight here for the grant and cooperative agreement focus area is the development of a new term and condition that would require our grant recipients to obtain a quote from a small minority women-owned businesses or labor surplus area firms when the procurement of goods or services exceed the simplified acquisition threshold. The term and condition is scheduled to publish in the Federal Register later this week, and we're looking forward to your feedback. The final draft of the EAP is due to the OMB on January 20th of this year, and it's also going to be available to the public. So be on the lookout for the Equity Action Plan. Next slide, please. Another action that NASA has taken in response to Executive Order 13985 is the update of the Form 1206. The form was recently updated to include language emphasizing NASA's commitment to advancing equity, civil rights, racial justice, and equal opportunity through its program and initiatives. For those who may not be familiar with Form NF 1206, it is the assurance of compliance with NASA regulations on non-discrimination in federally assisted programs. And this form must be signed by the recipients prior to receiving a NASA grant or cooperative agreement. The OMB number associated with this form will expire in December 2024. Next slide, please. On September 9th, President Biden signed Executive Order 14042 titled Ensuring Adequate COVID Safety Protocols for Federal Contractors. The order directs agencies to ensure that contracts and contract-like instruments covered by the order include a clause that requires the contractor and their subcontractors to comply with all guidance for workplace locations published by the task force. The executive order did impact 13 NASA contracts like cooperative agreement. And following the release of this order, I'm sure most of you may be aware that there was a nationwide injunction issued by a federal court on December 7th, blocking implementation of the provisions. So since then, NASA has revised its implementation guidance in accordance with the direction from the OMB. And this guidance was issued on December 14th and can be found on the Grant Policy and Compliance webpage. Next slide, please. NASA also issued a memo on September 15th establishing specific safety protocols for grant and cooperative agreement award recipients who are working on site at a NASA facility based on their attestation of their vaccination status. The memo, which is consistent with CDC and the White House Safer Workforce Task Force, require all NASA award recipients to complete a certification of their vaccination status when they are entering a NASA facility. The guidance also places the responsibility on award recipients for monitoring and ensuring that their employees are compliant with the certification requirement. For those recipients who are not vaccinated or who decline to disclose their vaccination status, they must provide a negative COVID test upon request. The memo, as well as instructions to COVID-19 attestation form, is available on the GPC external webpage. We ask that if you have any questions, that you direct those questions to your grant officer that are assigned to the award. Next slide, please. Following the release of COVID-19 safety protocols guidance, we also issued frequently asked questions that addresses the allowability of costs related to COVID-19 testing for grant recipients who are required to be physically present in NASA facilities. In short, award recipients whose personnel must report to a NASA facility to work on a NASA-funded project may charge the cost of COVID testing as an indirect cost to their award. Again, the FAQs and all related guidance can be found on the GPC website. Next slide, please. Finally, our Grants and Cooperative Agreement Manual was recently updated, released on November 30th. And we also follow that with a grant information circular that outlines a list of all of the major description. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go over all of the updates that were made, but you can refer back to the GPC website to get additional information on what those updates were. Next slide, please. Next slide. These are additional updates. Again, you can refer to the GPC website to get a list of all of the major revisions. We can move on to the next slide. Next slide. Next slide, please. All right, the final update that I have here is an upcoming employment opportunity that closes on January 31. If you have any questions regarding this opportunity, you can refer to the link that is listed on this slide, as well as email for any additional information that you would require. I will now pass it on to Mary Sladek, who will share some of upcoming notice of funding opportunities for the SMD. Mary, over to you.
Great, thanks, Christiane. And next slide, please.
I'm actually having some technical issues on this side, so I might have David, if he can, share his screen.
Okay, well, since to keep us on track, I'll just keep talking without the charts. You'll be able to get them later. There's also wonderful summaries. So I'm Mary Sladek. I'm with the Science Mission Directorate. I'm part of the Senior Advisors for Research and Analysis team, or SARA. And new since the September 2021 FDP, we have changes in our early career opportunities. One is our NASA postdoc program has a new contractor. It is the universities. It is the Oak Ridge Associated Universities, or ORAU, and they support the day-to-day operations of NPP. Normally, folks get to apply to the NASA postdoc program in early March, but right now, since we're in transition, we don't have the open application process yet. So if your recent PhDs are looking for this, it's coming soon. In addition, we have our ever popular Future Investigators in NASA Earth and Space Science and Technology. It was released on November 30th, which is about a month later than we normally release it. And we have raised the base amount of the award from $45,000 a year to $50,000 a year. And it's meant to function like a fixed amount award. And it's typically limited to participant support costs. The proposals are due 11th of February. And we have a replay of our optional telecon available for anyone to call into. And the solicitation and telecon charts are provided on the link on the chart, and I will not read it to you. You'll be able to see it when you get the charts. We have, if I was in person, I would be wearing a rose dress. So right now I'm talking about our annual research opportunities in space and earth sciences, which is a NASA research announcement, or NRA, and it's a notice of funding opportunity, or NOFO, and it is primarily what funds our science assistance listing. And the annual ROSA solicitation contains a summary, plus it contains about 125 separate funding opportunities that get added throughout the year. Our year tends to be longer than 12 months. The finest that I was talking about earlier is an example of a ROSES award. In addition, SMD is hoping that you will respond to our requests for information and our community announcements. Particularly, we are seeking to implement changes to our science policy document for science information policy. And again, when you get those charts, you'll be able to see how to access the RFI and an email points of contact. The Heliophysics Division and the Astrophysics Division both have community announcements out related to very large flight projects, which are contracts, not assistance awards. And finally, I am going to put a plug in for folks to share with their faculty to sign up for becoming a reviewer for science.nasa.gov. While it's a significant time commitment serving as a reviewer, it does allow folks to learn what's new in the field and get firsthand experience with the NASA review process. So if that is of interest to you, I hope that you will sign up. You can find it on our science.nasa.gov/researchers/volunteer review panels. We are living in the virtual world. If COVID vaccines and travel restrictions work, but perhaps one day we'll return to in-person panels. But for right now, it's virtual panels and also being able to work alone. So I think that I'm pretty much keeping us on time. And again, sign up for ROSES, and we hope you'll apply to our notice of funding opportunities. Take care until next time.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Christiane. All right, we will move on to USDA, and we have Tara Warner presenting for us. Over to you, Tara.
Good afternoon. My name is Tara Warner, and I'm Accounting Operations Branch Chief with USDA NIFA in the Office of Grants and Financial Management. I'm here to share with you some updates today. Next slide, please. You see here our hierarchy at NIFA, and that little green circle is where OGFM is housed. So you can kind of see where we fall within our organization as a whole. And OGFM has 3 divisions, which are the Financial Management Division, My Home, the Awards Management Division, and the Policy and Oversight Division. Next slide, please. These are some accomplishments that we have had in OGFM for fiscal year 21. We have awarded over 2,600 grants. We have obligated 100% of all of our funding for 1-year awards and for 2-year awards. We have prepared and certified a lot of ASAP authorizations, increases and decreases. We've processed interagency agreements We have done a lot of things with indirect cost, including clearing more than 300 inquiries and negotiating 22 indirect cost agreements. We have implemented Treasury secure payment system, which is a significant accomplishment, meaning that we no longer have to use Treasury as an intermediary to certify our own payments, which has been a huge continuous process improvement for us. We have completed 45% more post-award actions than in fiscal year 20, and we have closed 62% more grant awards than in fiscal year 20. We have also started some enterprise risk management initiatives, which have led to us identifying 111 risks in the risk register and presenting 9 enterprise risks. And we have also completed 10 compliance reviews at our partnering institutions. Next slide, please. Other updates that I would like to share with you is that we have filled over 104 vacancies for our full-time equivalent positions, and we are steadily working on more. I'm on a hiring panel right now, so that number will increase shortly. We also have very aggressive training and process for our new hires. Our policy guide has been updated for 2 CFR 200 in alignment with OMB for clearance and shared, and it's been shared with our partners. And additional policy guide partner input has been received for inclusion for our 2022 annual update. We are re-engineering RFAs. We're working to incorporate stakeholder recommendations for RFAs, and we anticipate that will be included in fiscal year 23. We have also had revisions to NIFA's application instructions for clarity, ease of use for our stakeholders. That's also anticipated to be finished and presented in fiscal year 23. And we are also aggressively developing dashboards to track real-time progress for our program implementation and funds obligations. Next slide, please. So Spira, schedule for program implementation from RFA to award. That is part of those dashboards I was previously talking to you about. Our Spira project is planning and an implementation tool used by us here at NIFA to help provide visibility and accountability to program, financial, and policy staff from announcement to award. Fiscal year 21 was a pilot program phase for us, and we chose that for non-AFRI competitive AFRI incapacity awards. Enhancements will continue to be made with the Spira pilot through fiscal year 2023, and we anticipate the full implementation will take place in fiscal year 2024. The results of this initiative have been that we have a monthly calendar of anticipated RFA publication and due dates on our NIFA website for stakeholder planning. It has helped NIFA to identify unique program awarding requirements to better address stakeholder needs. And it has helped us to streamline the time between the publication of the RFA and the notice of award. And internally, Spira has led to the development of the Spira dashboard. Next slide, please. So we also have a related to Spira Project Cafe related activity. It is a project that we're working on, and we have completed that first year pilot that has been associated with Spira. And we're continuing projected RFA publication schedule on our website, and you can see the address there. For fiscal year 2021, like was stated before, completed that first year pilot. Fiscal year 21 published RFAs are listed there for you to go over. And we also have a list of our estimated fiscal year 2022 RFAs. And we do anticipate earlier planning for fiscal year 2023. Next slide, please. We can move on to the next slide. Yes, thank you. So in regards to resources on how to get in touch with us and ask us additional questions, this is a list of our shared mailboxes here for OGFM, the Office of Grants and Financial Management specifically. If you have questions about any of the areas that are in parentheses, those are mailboxes specifically for those areas so we can get you that information. These are manned by staff that are aggressively answering questions. And usually we can get you an answer within 24 hours, but definitely within 48 hours. Next slide, please. And this is a list of Nifa resources. Each highlighted hyperlinked area will take you to a landing page to explain each area: competitive grants, capacity grants, coronavirus information, frequently asked questions associated with coronavirus, and our NIFA weekly updates. Next slide, please. So if you have any additional questions, please feel free to use those resources or to reach out to myself or put it in the Q&A so that it could be addressed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tara. At this time, I don't see any questions in the Q&A, so we will move on to the NIH update. And we have Avery Tucker. Over to you.
Thanks, Debbie. Hello, my name is Avery Tucker. I hope everyone's having a good start to their new year. I'm a grants policy analyst within the Office of Policy for Extramural Research at the NIH, and I'm going to be providing some policy and system process updates today. Next slide, please. So as of December 3rd, NIH is currently funded under the continuing resolution. This CR is effective until February, and NIH maintains the fiscal policies that have been in place over the past fiscal year indefinitely. Some guide notices with relevant information on our fiscal policies are referenced on this slide. Next slide, please. So moving on to some policy updates. The revised NIH grants policy statement, or GPS, was published in late December and is applicable to all NIH grants and cooperative agreements beginning on or after October 1st, 2021. This update incorporates new and modified requirements, clarifies certain policies, and implements change in statutes, regulations, and any policies that were implemented through the appropriate legal or policy processes since the previous version of the GPS, which was dated April 2021. As is standard, you may know that a significant changes table is posted alongside each revision of the NIH GPS, and that outlines all major changes that were published alongside the chapter that they are published in for your detailed review. I don't have time to go over those changes in detail today in this presentation, but they are linked in, or they are broken down in the linked table for your reference. Next slide, please. Oh yeah, sorry, here is the significant changes table link. We have some quick highlighted changes below, including those related to other support and biosketch requirements, which I'm gonna go over a little bit later in this presentation. Language related to NRSA childcare costs, which I'm also going to cover, as well as some clarifying language related to the Single Institutional Review Board, or SIRB policy, as well as new language related to application requirements, enhancing diversity, and review and reporting requirements for conference grants within our chapter 14 of the GPS. Next chapter, or next slide, please. Thank you. So moving on to another update. Last fiscal year, NIH announced that NRSA recipients are eligible to receive child care support. This initiative started out exclusively for NRSA fellowships, but was expanded to NRSA trainees on institutional research training awards later last year. So each full-time NRSA fellow or trainee is eligible to receive $2,500 per budget period to defray child care costs. There are more details about the eligibility requirements in the linked guide notice, as well as some FAQs that are also linked on this slide. I want to highlight here that we've gotten a lot of questions about this initiative, especially in relation to how to apply. So I want to clarify that NRSA fellows do need to apply for childcare costs, but NRSA trainees on institutional training awards do not need to apply specifically for this funding. NIH will be building in the cost to the award automatically, similar to how we award institutional allowances. And any childcare costs that remain unused will be offset as unobligated balances in the future years of the award. Our system updates for childcare costs for training grants will be implemented later this month. So recipients should be seeing those funds starting in awards that are made in February. Next slide, please. Moving on to discussing commitment transparency. I know everyone has heard a lot about this recently. As I'm sure you're all aware, last year NIH issued a guide notice clarifying the requirements for submitting other support and bio sketches. Overall, our goal in clarifying this policy, which has been longstanding, is to facilitate transparency and reporting of all research activities, both domestic and foreign, not merely financial. In line with the recent guide notice linked on this slide, NIH expects applicants to use the updated biosketch and other support formats for all submissions and will be requiring the use of these updated formats as of January 25th, 2022. Beginning January 25th of this year, NIH will require the new format pages, electronic signatures, and submission of supporting documentation aligned with what is described in the guide notice and within the updated grants policy statement. I also want to note that NIH worked closely with the Office of Science and Technology Policy on the recent NSPM, or National Security Presidential Memorandum 33 implementation guidance that was issued, and our other support implementation aligns closely with that guidance. NIH has extensive FAQs on this topic. We also have a central mailbox for questions on this policy, and that is linked within the guide notice, and we are doing our best to answer all questions as they come in. I want to note that we are currently working on a round of updates to our FAQs, and we're going to hopefully post that within the upcoming week. Next slide, please. Moving on to some of our systems process updates. Also beginning January 25th, 2022, applicants must use Forms G application packages. These Forms packages have been posted to all active funding opportunity announcements at this point in time, and a summary table listing all of these significant changes was posted alongside the updated instructions. You can find the updated instructions as well as the significant changes table and the guide notice announcing the reminder linked on this slide as well. Next slide, please. Next, I'm going to touch on Federal Financial Report, or FFR, submission via the Payment Management System, or PMS. We've heard from the recipient community that some folks have been having issues with FFR submission. Currently, the PMS system validates information in the expenditure FFR with the Federal Cash Transaction Report, or FCTR, and prevents recipients from manually updating many of those numbers. But since the expenditure FFRs and FCTRs have different due dates, we're seeing a lot of folks getting errors when the numbers are out of sync. In the long term, this issue should be resolved with the elimination of the Federal Cash Transaction Report, which is something that is an initiative alongside larger GM initiatives currently ongoing. But in the short term, NIH sent a memo to PMS requesting that FFRs be treated as interim annual reports, which don't have all of the validations and editing restrictions of final FFRs. Since March 2021, PMS has been converting all NIH final FFRs to interim annual FFRs on a weekly basis, and hopefully that should be resolving this problem. I'd encourage you to take a look at the linked guide notices if you have any questions, so you can figure out if you have a commonly occurring issue that could be resolved, or if you need to reach out to somebody in those guide notices. Next slide, please. Another issue that recipients have been encountering is the inability to submit FFRs on a closed payment management system, or PMS, document. When a recipient identifies a need to submit or revise an FFR on a closed PMS subaccount, they'll need to contact the NIH Office of Financial Management, or OFM, for assistance in reopening that document. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. So there's a lot of folks that could be contacted in this situation of needing to address FFR submissions for closed PMS subaccounts. The information is kind of a lot, so I outlined it here on this slide. I'm not going to go into detail, but this is here for your future reference. Next slide, please. NIH also announced in the last fiscal year that the requirement to have an ERA Commons ID was expanded to all senior key personnel, as defined in the NIH GPS and listed on this slide. Applicants will now encounter a system warning if the ERA Commons ID field is left blank or contains an invalid ERA Commons ID. This is currently just a system warning, and NIH has not yet set a date for it to become an error for submission, but details on this initiative are also linked within the guide notice on this slide. Next slide, please. This last system process update is regarding the NIH ERA and its partner agencies' expansion to require the use of two-factor authentication in order to access all ERA's external modules, including Commons, Commons Mobile, Internet Assisted Review, or IAR, and Assist. ERA began a phased approach for requiring the use of two-factor authentication for user accounts in September of 2021. Currently, this phased approach applies to all scientific account holders, but excludes administrative accounts until a little bit later in this calendar year. So please see the detailed information included on the linked guide notice for further details about this new phased approach for this timeline. Thank you. Before closing up, I just wanted to provide some additional reminders related to Health and Human Services and federal-wide systems that will be affecting NIH applicants and recipients. So as many of you are aware, there's an ongoing federal-wide effort to move towards the use of a new government-owned unique entity identifier, or UEI, to replace the Dun and Bradstreet DUNS number in our system. The federal government will stop using DUNS by April 2022. And entities registered in SAM will automatically be issued a UEI. But please remember that all new entities registering prior to April 2022 must still obtain a DUNS prior to SAM registration. Next slide, please. More details about this effort are linked on this second slide. I do want to point out that on and after January 25th, 2022, all applications must have a UEI because they're required as part of the Forms G update. That concludes my presentation for today. Next slide, please. I've included some additional links for our inboxes. If you have any grants policy questions, please reach out to the grants policy inbox, as well as our compliance and oversight office, our systems policy office, and our extramural inventions and technology resources for patents questions. I don't know if we have any time right now to address questions, Debbie, but I'm available to stay on until the end of the session in case additional questions come up in the Q&A that I can help address.
Thanks, Avery. Yeah, we do have time for some questions, and it looks like 12 came in, so I don't know if you want to pull up the Q&A yourself, but sure. First questions are at the top of the list, starting with Stephanie Scott.
Sure, yeah. Hi, Stephanie. The NIH salary cap has not changed with the extension of the continuing resolution. It's still maintained as per the guide notice that was most recently issued in fiscal year 2021. Next question. When does NIH expect to issue official guidance on the new salary cap amount? I believe that guidance will come out. The salary cap, I believe, will be extended for the duration of the continuing resolution, but keep an eye out for any additional information that will be published via guide notice within the NIH Guide to Grants and Contracts. Yeah, a lot of these questions seem to be about the salary increase. I can't speak to that right at this moment, but any information that we have will be issued via guide notice through the NIH Guide to Grants and Contracts. All right, I see another question here about other support. NIH policy indicates that a researcher must use other support template in Word. Could an institution convert NIH's Word template to a fillable PDF? That is a good question, Cynthia. I'm going to take a look into that, and I will answer it through the type answer function after I'm done with my presentation. Marcia asks, does NIH anticipate changes to policy based on NSPM 33 guidance? Like I mentioned in the presentation, our guidance was, NIH was involved within the process of developing the NSPM 33 guidance, working closely with OSTP throughout that process. So our implementation does currently align very closely with that guidance as it stands, and I don't foresee any additional changes. That being said, keep an eye out, like I mentioned, for guide notices. If there would be any, they would be published through the Guide to Grants and Contracts. All right. Do you happen to have an update as to whether Science CV will be ready by January 25th to create other support forms as well as accommodate electronic signature? That is a good question, Stephanie, and I will go ahead and check with our systems policy folks and get back to you through the chat function as well. DHHS NIH has been communicating for almost a year that elimination of the XCTR is a priority. Is there an update as to when the elimination is a goal? Stephanie, that is a good question as well. So NIH has not been the lead for that project, and I don't have, unfortunately, an update as to the progress of that project. But again, I will be in contact with some of my colleagues who have been a part of that initiative. I believe that the XCTR elimination is still targeting this calendar year, but I don't have a specific date for that at this time. Stephanie asked whether other significant contributors will be required to have an ERA Commons ID. I do want to say yes, yes, other significant contributors will be required to have an ERA Commons ID. I see a couple more questions about Science CV. And I see a question from Carla. Yes, if your FFR submission is not still working, you should definitely reach out to the folks that are listed on the slide that I have related to who to contact, whether it be OFM or PMS. But those resources are linked on the slide as well for you to review after this. Yes, Joseph, I will disseminate the answer to the Science CV question. I believe that when I answer the question through this Q&A functionality, that will be noted later. Debbie, can you confirm that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I will make sure to answer that through the chat function. It looks like those are all the questions that I can answer right now, but like I said, I will be able to stay until the end of the session and hopefully have an answer to folks that have questions that I couldn't answer live.
Thank you, Avery. Appreciate your time. All right, next up is DHS, and we have Heidi Custer. Over to you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, I'm having some technical difficulties, so I'm going to try this now. So, okay, so we can move on to the next slide, thanks. For those of you that are new to FDP, I just wanted to put down what the financial assistance and policy oversight, mission goals, and branches are. We are a headquarters office at DHS under the Undersecretary of Management. We've had some recent changes. So under the branches, we now have 3 branches. We have merged our strategic planning branch with our oversight branch. So we've got 3 now. Next slide, please. So our major initiatives through our office, we manage the Data Act reporting. We implement DHS grants measures, which has become a large part of OMB's focus nowadays. We review the notices of funding information or opportunities, the NOFOs, perform oversight reviews for our financial assistance programs. So these are not like OIG visits. We actually go to the different components, FEMA and S&T, and so on, and review how they do their program work internally to make sure that they abide by the uniform guidance and our financial assistance policy manual. And then we represent DHS on a lot of different government-wide groups, including the FACE, the CUSMO. I had a meeting earlier today with the FACE subcommittee on assistance listings, so on. So that's basically what our office does. Next slide, please. So we don't have an appropriations yet that they've talked about in other presentations as well. So there really isn't anything new out of DHS to bring forward, but I wanted to let you all know about the National Security Presidential Memorandum number 33. And that talks about the guidance for implementing National Security Presidential Memo 33, which focuses in on the national security strategy for United States government supporting research and development, which is called the guidance. So that's obviously a mouthful there. The OSTP released this. The OSTP is the National Science and Technology Policy Organization and Priorities Act. And what they do, they provide the president and other folks with advice on scientific, engineering, technological aspects of the economy. The big thing that this means to you all as members is the goal of this memo is for the government to clearly describe what it needs to know and for research to be able to report the same information in the same way to the greatest extent possible. So this was just released earlier this month, so we're not exactly sure what that's going to mean to you, but the link is included for both the memo and the guidance in this slide. Next slide, please. So they talk about the core principle of this guidance to comply with the memo and the relevant laws and regulations, the typical government ease that you see that the federal government sends out. We focus in on transparency in disclosing the relevant activities that will focus in on potential conflicts of interest, and the commitment to this is a part of the broader set of the researcher's responsibilities. Then the consequences for failing to disclose this requested information should be made clear, and that's clear to your as recipients as well. So the government needs to make sure that you all are aware what information should be made clear. So next slide, please. So like I said, this was really quick for us because we don't have anything new. But since that memo came out, we thought that that would be something that would be of interest to you as members of this organization. So that's it for me. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Hey, thank you, Heidi. I don't see any questions currently in the Q&A for DHS at this time, but something might pop up a little later. So you're welcome to stick around.
Yeah, I'll monitor those. Thank you, Debbie.
All right, thank you, Heidi. All right, next, I will be presenting the Office of Research Agency update. Next slide. Just three things. I'm going to just introduce NavalX, which has been around for a few years, but I have not introduced it to the academic community. Quick person update and a quick funding opportunity update. So next slide, please. All right, so NavalX, Tech Bridges. This was an initiative started by the Secretariat, RDA, in approximately 2019. It was kicked off, and it's had a couple years now to gain its momentum. And the primary objectives here were to have a connected network to enhance the collaboration between Navy labs, industry, academia, which is FDP, for example, state and local government, as well as other military branches. Navy labs, what we mean there is not just the Office of Naval Research or the Naval Research Lab, but the many, many naval warfare centers that we have all over the country, and two overseas ones actually, that are much more embedded in the local economy. They're much more connected to the state and local government where they reside. And so one of the keys here was to offer collaboration space in a commercial business environment that made it easy access and collaboration for this diverse set of collaborators. So that was the main goal there. I provided the website link at the bottom of the page there for the Naval Tech Bridges. I really encourage you to go to that website to learn more. Next slide, please. And this is just a snapshot from the website. This is showing where we have tech bridges currently stood up. And they have space, they're doing collaboration events, conversations. And so you know, if you see one near your academic community, please do reach out to this website and look at the technical areas that they're looking for collaboration. And the idea here is, again, the connectivity and the conversations, which will then create possibly turn into funding opportunities or turn into competitions or different opportunities to demonstrate capabilities in a collaborative manner. So, so again, that's just a snapshot of the tech bridges that have been stood up since 2019 throughout the country. And if you notice, we do have one in the UK as well as Japan. So next slide. All right, so the main purpose of this slide is just, again, to highlight the CNR support. This is, again, a place to explore. They ask the what if question, share ideas, and as far as Navy problems that are both specific to the Warfare Center or the Navy Lab that is in your region, but as well as the Navy more broadly. The main approach to this is what we call an innovation pipeline, and I've just taken a few excerpts from the website to kind of define what the innovation pipeline is and how this process works at these local tech bridge areas. So as problems get sourced by the Navy, they get curated. There's market survey scans, and that's where we've really found a lot of benefit from these tech bridges in getting the diverse input from the different communities. And that potentially turns into funding opportunities to create minimal viable products, as well as prototypes or experimentations where we are looking at potential technology solutions for the Navy. So this is, again, these tech bridges have been stood up since 2019. And I really encourage you as academics, if you have some proximity within these slide 4 with these various tech bridges, to please reach out through the website and make some initial contacts there. We'd love to have your institutions engage in our conversations at these collaboration spaces. Next slide. All right, just a quick some personal updates. Abe Sabag retired on the 31st of December. He was the director of our engineering and systems review branch. So since his retirement, the current point of contacts are there, same people, but just want to make sure people know who to reach out to if they have specific questions to either engineering services, government property reviews, or purchasing system reviews. In addition, we had a senior administrative contracting officer in San Diego retire at the end of December as well. As far as her regional workload and her responsibilities, which is by state, there's 2 POCs on the slide there to contact as well. All right, next slide. And here's just just a couple of funding opportunities that have short deadlines in the near future, and they're in order of deadlines. So the first one is an announcement relative to a DoD program that we're working with. The key there is white papers are due 14th of January, which is end of this week. The Vannevar Bush Faculty Fellowship, also one of our major and popular programs. Again, white papers were due last fall, but just to remind you here, proposals will be accepted until through March 11th. So That's another deadline that's right around the corner. And the last one is our STEM program, where we will be accepting proposals through the end of March of this year. So just some short timelines for you to be aware. Our long range broad agency announcement, where we will accept white papers and proposals for our entire technology portfolio, is of course posted on our public website, and that is open through September 30th this year. So the website link is at the bottom of the slide deck. And with that, next slide. Let me see if there's any questions. I do not see any questions for O&R. So I will stick around. So if you have any follow-up questions, you can throw them in the Q&A for me. So with that, I'm going to call up NSF and over to Jeremy Leff.
Thanks, Debbie. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jeremy Leffler from the Policy Office at NSF, and I'm pleased to be able to provide you with a very brief update on Nsf Activities. And while this will be a brief presentation, I can promise you that we'll have a lot more to say at the May meeting, so do stay tuned for that. Later today, you'll also, I hope you'll be able to attend a session that's being presented by my colleague, Erwin Giancondani, about the proposed new Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships Directorate. And so I encourage you to attend that as well, because there'll be a lot of good new information in there to see. Okay, so we already have this next slide up. And so we are in the beginning stages of getting the proposal and award policies and procedures guide ready for posting in the Federal Register. The current version, NSF 22-1, went into effect last October, and that is the current PAP guide version you should be referring to. So as you can see from our timeline, we anticipate an early spring posting for public comment. And that will be followed by a 60-day public comment process. NSF will then work to address all of the comments prior to sending that package to OMB for approval. And we're targeting October 2022 this year for issuance of the PAP guide with a January 2023 implementation. You'll notice that the issuance kind of timeline that we're kind of reverting to our previous timeline for making the PAP guide effective. And that's because NSF is also targeting December 31st of this year for moving from Fastlane to research.gov fully for proposal preparation and submission. And we want to ensure that our guidance in the PAP guide is written in such a way that it's consistent with this major change. Next slide, please. So we, last year, NSF added a table to assist with disclosure requirements called NSF pre-award and post-award disclosures relating to the biographical sketch and current and pending support. This, what you see here, is a screenshot of a multi-page document that you can link to from the PAP guide 22-1, as well as from the Policy Office website. And on the horizontal axis, we identify the type of activity, so the biographical sketch, current and pending support, facilities, equipment, and other resources, project reports, post-award terms and conditions, or disclosure not required. And the table lays out the type of activity on the vertical axis and where you place it in the proposal or in a post-award requirement responsibility. And we really believe that this one document will be of great assistance to you and your faculty in understanding what NSF's expectations are and where we expect you to place this information, either pre or post-award. So for example, if you're wondering whether honoraria or gifts or mentoring should be included as a disclosure on any of those documents that I mentioned, you'd go through this table and you'd see that those are not required for disclosure. We have also just added 2 new rows to this document based on questions that we received from the community. And those are on startup packages received from the home organization, as well as those from outside the organization. What I really want to highlight, though, what's important to note is that we have made a number of updates to this table since we first released it last summer. And we include the most recent date at the top of the document. And if you're looking at this document today, you'll see that the most recent version has today's date that we made these 2 recent changes. So if you're the type of person that likes to bookmark pages to refer to later, what I really want to encourage you to do is to make sure you bookmark the page where this document is housed rather than the PDF document itself, because otherwise you could be working off an older document. Next slide, please. Okay, so I did mention earlier about moving fully from Fastlane to research.gov by the end of this year. So way back in September of 2020, NSF put out important notice number 147, which talked about the proactive steps that NSF is taking to incrementally move preparation and submission of all proposals from Fastlane to research.gov. And we are continuing to target December 31st of this year to do this. So we have been doing and will continue to do a lot of outreach this year to help nudge organizations to begin using research.gov to prepare and submit proposals. So the good news is that our efforts seem to be working. And at this point last year, about 20% of the submissions that we have were in research.gov, and currently we're at 48%. So keep up the good work. It's important to get your faculty using research.gov because we want there to be less of a learning curve when Fastlane is no longer available. As you can see on the slide, 70% of all funding opportunities are supported by research.gov, and the funding opportunity will clearly state in the important information and revision notes section, and you see that's highlighted here on the slide, it'll highlight whether submission is available in research.gov or required, because a number of solicitations are being put out there where research.gov is required and not available for submission in Fastlane. I will remind you that grants.gov will continue to be available for most NSF proposals. And again, you want to make sure that you're checking the funding opportunity for guidance. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is our current capabilities table, and we've been using this slide for a good while now, and the column on the left, what is current, has been growing and growing. The most recent proposal types added to research.gov, this was last year, letters of intent, program solicitations that require letters of intent or that require preliminary proposals. Those are now available in research.gov. Goalie, planning, center, and research infrastructure proposals were also added towards the end of 2021. So the only proposal types that you still cannot submit are postdoctoral fellowships and SBIR and STTR proposals, and those will be coming. You can see we have timelines here on what's upcoming for 2022. As for other future capabilities, there are still some solicitation-specific requirements, such as the project data form that is required for some proposals to the Education and Human Resources Directorate that are not yet available. So you'll see in the solicitation, it'll say must be submitted via Fastlane or grants.gov. Also, the ability to add secondary units of consideration is something that we'll be adding in this spring. We'll also be adding the ability to submit supplemental funding requests that is scheduled for the fall this year. So a lot has been added. And again, we really want to encourage you and your faculty to begin using research.gov don't wait till the last minute to do it. We don't want to overload you with questions from your faculty, and certainly we want to be able to make sure that our help desk can manage the load as well. Next slide, please. I'm not going to touch on all of these, but what I want to emphasize is that we continue to develop resources for the research community on research.gov, because we are, again, moving towards a situation where Fastlane will no longer be available for use as a proposal submission vehicle. So the more information, the more resources that we can provide, we hope will push you to begin using research.gov now. In addition to FAQs and video tutorials, there's also a demo site, which is updated in tandem with the live site. And that is really a great way for you and your faculty to become familiar with the system. Do also note for your calendars that my colleague Stephanie Yee from our Division of Information Systems will be presenting a session this week at 11 a.m. Eastern Time to go into much more detail about research.gov, and she'll be doing a demo of the system and some of the additions and enhancements that we've made over the last month. So please do plan to attend that. It should be very informative. Next slide, please. Finally, I want to let you know about some upcoming outreach opportunities. This year, the Policy Office will be conducting some periodic topic-specific webinars based on the questions that we get from the research community. So later this month, we'll be conducting a session dedicated to current and pending support questions. That'll be on January 31st. Registration will open in another few days, and you can sign up to be notified of this and other types of registration opportunities on this website here, nsfpolicyoutreach.com. You click on the Get Notified button and put in your information, and we'll let you know once registration opens up. We're also planning another virtual NSF grants conference this year, or this spring, rather, I should say, from June 6th to 10th. And again, you can receive information by clicking on that Get Notified button on our website. However, if you don't want to wait until June to see all of that, those presentations, that's not a problem, because we've built a resource library of presentations that's available on this website. The most recent presentations are from the October 2021 Grants Conference. There are presentations covering proposal preparation, merit review, and award management. Those are all available on demand. And there are also NSF-specific, NSF Directorate-specific presentations there as well. So we do hope you'll check those out. There's a lot of information and resources there for you. So please check it out and spread the word to your colleagues at your organizations. So that's all I have for today. Thank you very much for your time. And I guess I'll be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Hey, Jeremy. Yeah, thanks. There's several questions in the Q&A. If you want to pull that up, you have I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes if you want to walk through this.
So it says, what is the final date? Final transition will occur from Fastlane to research.gov. So I mentioned December 31st is our target date for transitioning proposal preparation and submission from Fastlane to research.gov. There are some other Fastlane functions that we are still working on transitioning, and the timeline that I'm talking about is for proposal preparation and submission. Okay. The PAP guide, Deirdre says, the PAP guide still links the initial reporting table tool. Can you provide a link where the most up-to-date version is housed? I will provide a, I'll put a, I'll drop a link.
She answered her question below, so you can skip that one.
Oh, okay, see it, I got it, okay. Our central office would like to identify PIs who are still using Fastlane. How can we get info on who is still using Fastlane so we can assist with the transition? I don't know that that's something that NSF is able to provide. We do communicate quite frequently with PIs who have in-progress proposals to let them know about upcoming changes. So we are communicating with them. I think this may be just something that your institutions will need to determine the best way to let them know about switching over. Okay. When I submitted via research.gov and listed 2 programs for my grant to be considered by, it only showed the second one entered. However, the division could see both. Is this something you are fixing? I think I might need a little bit more information on that, or you might want to bring this and a little bit more information to the session with Stephanie on Wednesday. Will research.gov be tweaked to provide more information as to why uploaded proposal documents are rejected? So we are always looking at the language and the error and warning messages that we are using. And if there is more information that we can provide as technology allows us to do that, we will do it. So we are, it's something that we're consistently and constantly looking at to be able to refine and improve the guidance that you get so that you can have a proposal that is compliant and it's compliant when you submit it. That looks to be all for me. So I guess we'll turn it back over to you, Debbie, and to EPA.
Thank you, Jeremy. All right, EPA, Alexandra, over to you.
Thank you, Debbie. Hello, everybody. Next slide, please. So we just have a few updates for you. As usual, we want to tell you about our research funding opportunities that we have, the recent EPA recipient application information notices, our EPA grants award process webinars, and as usual, our EPA grants listserv. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So we have just 3 open RFAs right now. The first is the Research to Reduce Consumer Food Waste in the United States request for application. That has been open since December 10th, and it goes through February 9th. Our Water Quality Benefits request for application ends later this month. It's been open since around Thanksgiving. And the last one we have open from October 27th and just right around the corner this week ends is our life cycle analysis to support cost-effective enhanced aquifer recharge requests for applications. These are all hyperlinked to our research funding opportunities page where you can take a look and find any active or upcoming RFAs that we have available at EPA. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So we don't have any new recipient applicant information notices to really tell you about, but they all are available on our EPA grants policy resource page. The last time we talked, I had the status of our EPA implementation of government-wide DUNS and UAI transition back in November. And this talks about, I think, the community as well versed in this, of the government-wide transition using DUNS, from using DUNS to the SAM.gov created UEI. Next slide, please. I did note previously that we have this RAIN available to you, and that EPA, until further notice, all of our funding opportunities, both competitive and non-competitive, are going to continue to use the DUNS compatible grant application package, and we are not implementing this change at this time. Next slide, please. So why am I telling you about this again? We did revise the RAIN to provide some information from the Federal Service Desk. If you are unfamiliar with the Federal Service Desk, that is the kind of one-stop shop for all of the government-wide SAM.gov related systems. And one of the resources that we definitely wanted to highlight is that the Federal Service Desk did a really great job in creating what does the new SAM.gov UEI mean for me? So it goes through the different roles and responsibilities based on users of why you might need a UEI, how to obtain a UEI, and what it means to you as a user or a recipient of federal grants. So we have links to that revised RAIN, which is why I wanted to share that with you. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So we're hoping later this month to have another EPA Grants Award Process webinar. The date is not established yet, but these are hosted by our EPA's Office of Grants and Debarment. It's a high-level information session that covers our specific EPA-related topics to finding an award for and applying for EPA grants, as well as the EPA's view on basis of managing a grant award. We do require advanced registration, and the link there goes to our site. Currently, it does have the latest webinar available that we hosted back in September, and it also has that webinar recording if you'd like to go look at it at your convenience. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. As always, I want to highlight our Office of Grants and Debarment listserv. And this is a listserv that you can sign up at your convenience, at your leisure. It only requires your name and email address, and you will be sent an email when we send out these periodic updates. So they include new guidance and information that's posted on our website, such as the grants webinars, any training that we have, any recipient applicant information notices, and any other pertinent general grants information. One of our most recent listserv was the grants innovation sessions that the Office of Management and Budget sponsors to gain information on the SAM.gov UEI. So we share a lot of good information there. If you're interested in any EPA specific information, I would encourage you to sign up. Again, all that's needed is your name and your email address, and you can self-subscribe at your convenience. Next slide, please. It's right there on our homepage, so it's really easy to get to, just 1 or 2 clicks, and you'll be on the page to subscribe to our listserv. Next slide, please. That's my contact information. I'm a grants management specialist in the Grants Competition Advocate Office of the Office of Grants and Debarment here at EPA, and I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any, but I don't see any in the question and answer Q&A box.
All right, thanks, Alexander. At this time, I don't see any questions either. So we will move on to the final presentation, which is GWIR. So over to you, Susan Sloan.
Thank you so much, Debbie, and Happy New Year, everybody. So I make this comment every time when I present, but I think it bears repeating that GWIR is in fact not a federal agency. Rather, it's a separate membership organization at the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine that serves as secretariat for the FDP. So next slide, please. So I'll start with membership. Very much like the FDP, GWIR is a member organization composed of universities, corporations, national laboratories, and federal agencies. We are pleased to welcome 3 institutional partners that have newly committed to join in 2022, and that is IQVIA, which is a healthcare data corporation, quite a large corporation, Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, and the University of the District of Columbia, which is the nation's capital's only public HBCU and only public institution of higher education in and for the District of Columbia. So our current standing in terms of institutional membership is at 55 university industry partners. So next slide, please. So we host 3 meetings per year. These meetings are topical in nature, and the topics come forward from our member institutions and our representatives that serve. The last topical meeting was held in the fall of last year. It was very timely. It was looking at addressing supply chain and manufacturing challenges and opportunities. I might just note anecdotally, I went to Trader Joe's yesterday, and because of supply chain issues, there was absolutely no produce. There was nothing on the shelves whatsoever. I've never seen it like that, with signage saying that due to transportation and supply chain issues, poor weather along the Eastern corridor, there is simply no food to be had at the moment. So it just points to the validity of these supply chain issues. Very timely. Next slide, please. So in this particular case, we held it as a virtual workshop, a series of 4 2-hour workshops, looking at these 4 different subtopics under the main theme. The one was maintaining competitiveness and economic security in critical industries. Second, supply chain risk management, assuring supply reliability and mitigating demand disruptions. The third was the role of disruptive technologies in supply chain resilience and sustainability. And the fourth was creating new manufacturing capacities with small and medium enterprise organizations. So just like we always do at the conclusion of a GWIR meeting, we develop a proceedings of a workshop in brief. Essentially, it's a short summary of what transpired during the discussions. And that proceedings is expected to publish by the National Academies Press by the end of next month. We also have a video collection or a Vimeo collection of the full series that's available of viewing on the website. Next page, or next slide, please. Well, this is not even, whoops. So that's not even showing. So that appears to be a blank slide from what I'm seeing here, but in fact, it is supposed to show the image for our next meeting, which is supporting partnerships for food security and sustainability, set for February 16th. Next slide, please. So with this particular meeting, we're going to be looking at the importance of collaboration, partnership, and interdisciplinary research. And we've broken it into 4 panels. The one panel will look at food access and nutritional security, touching upon things like food access and public and population health, food and nutrition related health equity, biofortification, affordability, information and marketing, and production, manufacturing, and transportation, among others. The second panel will address food, agriculture, and climate change, getting at issues like the goals and progress for reducing greenhouse gas emissions here in the United States, land use changes for carbon sequestration and storage, and a look at what other countries are doing, who's in the lead in terms of transforming agricultural industries. And then the fourth is curbing and preventing food loss and waste. I thought it was interesting that we just saw that there is an open RFA right now at EPA on research to reduce consumer food waste in the US. So I made a notation of that. We will be hearing from folks from USDA and EPA at this next meeting, both talking about food waste and loss. And we'll address the scale of the problem, consumer education, partnerships and circular economy activities, and then global leadership with Netherlands really at the helm. We are currently planning this as an in-person meeting at the National Academies Keck Center with an online viewing option available as well. And I conferred with our co-chairs this morning. We are still on. We are going to make an assessment at the end of this week. We do have people registering, but obviously with this ongoing COVID situation, we need to be cautious. So a final determination will be made as to whether we move to a virtual, an all virtual meeting. But at this particular time, as of today, it is still planned as an in-person meeting with an online option. Next slide, please. Always before the GWIR meetings, we also have a GWIR council meeting. This is a subset of our leadership, or a subset of our membership, composed of a number of nominated and appointed leaders that help guide the direction of GWIR's activities. At this point, we have a meeting planned, again in person, for February 15th. And Joni Rutter, who is the acting director of the National Center for Advancing Translational Sciences, has agreed to present. And among other things, NIH has been very good in that they have, at the beginning of every year or the end of every year, to deliver to us at the beginning of a year, they assess the interest across their various institutes of the topics that they would love GWIR to address in its dialogue, cross-sector dialogue. And they present that list of proposed topics to us. So we are hoping that with Joni Rutter's presentation, she can also encourage other federal agencies to do something similar, look across their agency and provide the roundtable with topics that would be of particular interest for GWIR to address that would be useful for the agencies themselves. We also currently have, and again, this is a little bit in flux as of a call that I had this morning, we have a leadership dinner in place with Chris Frey, the Deputy Assistant Administrator for Science Policy in the Office of Research and Development at EPA, making a presentation. If we end up jettisoning the leadership dinner, we will have him present at the meeting itself. So that is, unfortunately, again, as of a call this morning, there's a little bit of uncertainty at this particular moment, but we do have this council meeting in place. So next slide, please. We also do a regular set of webinars. They're typically held on a monthly basis. In this particular case, we skipped September, October, and November because the GWIR meetings themselves, when occurring in a virtual sense, end up being a series of virtual webinars as well. And we were low in staff. We had some staff changeover. So we missed September and October, November, but July, we held a webinar on Introduction to the Agricultural Genome to Phenome Initiative. In August, we held a webinar on the Model for Place-Based Innovation, RTI's Forethought Research Collaboration Challenge. And December of last year, IBM's Discovery Accelerator Partnership. These are typically 1 hour in length. They are free and open to the public writ large. The recordings are freely available on the GWIR website, and I would encourage any and all of you to visit those. I would also, if there is any time when there is a topic that you would like addressed in a webinar, feel free to propose that to GWIR. Again, these are open public webinars all around science and technology policy. Next slide, please. And then finally, I'll just acknowledge, and you heard this during the opening welcome remarks by FDP's co-chairs this morning, we are absolutely thrilled to welcome a new senior program assistant, Sarah Pietrcheck, who joined us at the end of last year, and she will be serving at 100% time, which is new for FDP after a period of time. So we're really delighted to have Sarah on board. And as was mentioned this morning, please everybody give her a warm welcome, as I know that all FDP people shall do. And with that, last slide, please. I think that's it for me now. I will mention that the GWIR staff is listed below. We have a new senior program assistant for GWIR as well that was hired right before the close of last year, Kristen Nairn, and she is gearing up pretty quickly. And then Megan Nicholson is a name that is familiar to many who participate in GWIR activity. Clara Savage is our senior finance business partner, and of course myself. So thank you. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Hey, thank you, Susan. I don't see any questions in the Q&A submission at this time. So what I'd like to do is thank all my federal colleagues and you, Susan, at the National Academies for presenting today. Again, we had just south of 500 attendees at one point. So this information is in high demand. So it's part of how we continue this partnership. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up a little bit early and hand it over back to Sarah and David.